Okay, welcome back, ladies and gents. I hope you all enjoyed your weekend and are ready for another exciting week in the markets. In this video, I wanted to touch on how to navigate scenarios where price is out of sync with your narrative for the week. So, normally, like today, on a Sunday, we will set out our plan for the week ahead, and there comes a time like this week that just went where price just absolutely comes out of sync with that plan. And what happens there is because people hadn't planned for that, they throw themselves into the deep end of the pool and start, making silly mistakes because, they don't know how to act. So I want to cover the scenario, the best, you know, process to take yourself through, or the best thing you can do in order to present yourself from making silly mistakes, and how you can adapt and when you should adapt. Right? So before we start breaking that down, we need to build a bit of context. And this week was a perfect example. I want to use this week as the blueprint here, right? And as the example here. So let's build some context as to what has happened over here. So you see that this low gets punched in, right? So let's actually take this back to here. Right, we get this low being put in. Price then shifts, gives us this trigger, right? So once we take this out, call that the BST, that's a buy side trigger. We want to make that a thicker line, right? This tells us that we are now shifting bullish, right? We have buy side liquidity up here. Sell side liquidity down here. Again, super simple, super basic, right? And as of right now, the only array that we have is this one down here. I'm just gonna expand this ever so slightly. So you see, this is what we're left with. If we play forward one bar, right, we now have a new bullish imbalance that price can tap into. Right, and we know that bullish order flow is confirmed. We've got these distribution wicks forming up here and injection wicks down here. We know that injection has, stepped into the market or has done its job because we take out significant structures. This is our structural high, the high that took out the most recent low and made recent lows. So we have shifted. We are anticipating that this move will get rebalanced and that price can then start to pick up again, right? And you can see that if we play this out, bang, we get that continuation, and we are looking for this draw on liquidity to get traded towards, right? We haven't got any arrays in the way here. This is what we call low resistance, right? There's nothing to really stop price other than this imbalance, which wasn't sliced, right? We had body closures within it, so it wasn't as strong as a properly sliced imbalance where there's no body closes. So you see it did cause some trouble, but nothing that price couldn't handle. So you see we get drawn towards those highs, bang. So this low becomes a strong low. Why? Because it created new arrays. It took price into new expensive areas on our chart. And you can see it took out this area of buy side liquidity as well, right? So we were seeking new liquidity, right? And we sought that, or we found that new liquidity over here. And you see that price begins to stabilize a bit. Now, we are waiting for more or less a confirmation of this range. So normally you kind of want to do that on your lower time frames, but you can go, okay, cool, let's have a look on the 4 hour what we have there, right? So we want to see body closures below this low, and then we can really confirm that range. So let's just wait for that. Nothing there, bang. So now at this point we can confirm that this range is now in play, right? So we've put in a strong low, we put in this weak high over here. It's once this happens, it's a bit less weak because we have shifted on our lower time frame, but the bias remains the same on our higher time frame, right? We're still bullish, and yeah, overall that range gets confirmed. So we can now start looking for areas where liquidity can pool for price to inject new liquidity and take price higher. You have to understand that the way that price moves, when we take out, right, when we take out sell side liquidity, inject new liquidity at these areas on our chart where price is deemed as cheap, This provides fuel for price to move higher and break these areas that were previously deemed as expensive, right? So we had to find new buyers to break this area which was once deemed as expensive. We push price higher, we break through this region, and then that fuel begins to exhaust itself, right? We trade to an area where price is deemed as too expensive and where buyers now want to step out of the market, right? There's no one here willing to push this price higher, and most likely sellers are beginning to step in. So that exhausts itself, and in order now to take price higher, we need to pull back to find areas where buyers are interested in stepping in again, to then break this high, if that's what price is going to do. So where are the areas where price can do this? Well, number one is our imbalance, right? And once that high got confirmed, as we mentioned, this becomes our dealing range, and we can put on the dealing range tool, which is always great to have on the arsenal of tools, right? And you can see this falls into that discounted region of that range, right? Lastly, you have this order block, right? And then what you're more or less anticipating from this is some kind of bottoming out of price around here, right? And then seeing the buy side of this curve get fulfilled, right? Cool. The only thing in the way as of right now is this bearish imbalance. We can fade this out a bit to not overclutter the charts, but understand this is an opposing array, right? So even if you did manage to go long here, you have to be careful because you're only long up until this. If price doesn't induce this and body close above, then you're in territories for price to continue lower. So at this point, your buy side isn't confirmed, right? Your buy side isn't confirmed. What you need is some kind of lower time frame buy side trigger to get put in place, close above that, and then you can get confirmed plays. But as of right now, we want to see some kind of bottoming out of price around here. So bang, and yeah, so let's see what price does. So you see we get this kind of, if it wants to play, right? So we get this kind of inside bar here, not much you can do. That was a Tuesday, right? Bang, again, we're just trading within this range, the Monday high and low. Ideally, we want to see either something get taken out on this end to then target the opposite end of this, or the other way around, right? Well, that's great. All right, bring it back. So you see we get the scenario where we take out the lower end of price, right? This sell side liquidity, and we push higher. Now at this point, price is very much doing exactly what we wanted it to do, right? What happens? We inject liquidity from this bullish imbalance. Let's just get rid of this and tidy it up, right? We induce that bearish imbalance, and we close above. And now watch, if I go to the next day, we actually form a new bullish array, right? So what we can do here is get that faded bullish imbalance on. In fact, no, we will make this our main imbalance. We'll turn this to a faded imbalance. And then we understand that this one got induced. So in theory, and a textbook play would be, we want to see price, now that we've induced bearish intent, we've created new bullish intent, we want to see price now begin to sync up with that higher time frame narrative and take this out, right? So we'd be looking for some kind of play into this to then trade higher. Now that we've mapped this all out, I actually want to drop into our 4-hour time frame to start looking at the finer details and to actually bring around the lesson conclusion that I'm trying to explain and portray here, right? So visibility, we just want this on the day. Right, so now we understand, let's just bring in that daily imbalance. Actually, no, you understand where it is, it's here, right? So on our 4-hour, that becomes this liquidity void. So in fact, what we can do is we can bring it back to this, right? Nah, we're not gonna do that. I don't want to mess that up. So we understand that price grabbed liquidity from underneath this previous low, this cheap area on our chart, sell side liquidity. We begin to form some kind of strong rollover where we isolate this low right here. Right, notice how we get imbalances after this and how we take out significant structure. So we take out this here, right? This becomes, sorry, this is an imbalance. We take out this buy side trigger here. This is that high that made the most recent low. So that's your more or less buy side trigger. Right, bang, we get imbalances and then we get this liquidity void right here. Now, this one becomes most important because it's our largest one. It's our inefficiency. We want to see price hold this. Price hold this. Or if it doesn't, you can at least play some interim trades up here, right? So you want to be targeting this, right? You can trade this because of that bullish momentum. If not, you can bring your eyes to here as the next level, right? But this one is where our eyes were, and you want to start looking for longs around here. And if we start to play price, right, bang, you see that you get a nice push up, right? So going to show that you can play this here, but you have to be very aware that, you know, all we have to do is take out the previous day's high and your trade idea can collapse. So there was probably some form of divergence here. If we go to DXY, yeah, you see there was that divergence. So you would have taken the position out when DXY took out that corresponding level, but you see that we fully induce the array, right? We fully induce this bullish imbalance. And then we get our eyes turned towards this next bullish imbalance over here. So if we play here, okay, cool. We start to see some kind of bullish intent on our daily. What does that look like? Right, we're starting to hold the midpoint of that daily. So here you're saying, okay, cool. We're still very much in that bullish territory. If we look at what's going on here, right, you've got buy side liquidity pooling up here, right? You've got BSL, buy side liquidity pool. That's that there. That's what you want to target. You now have your range, right? This is your dealing range, your newly formed dealing range on your 4 hour, right? So if I just pull it up from low, if it lets me, if I pull this up from low to high, I don't know why it's not letting me bring it on, but if you pull it up from low to high and you shift that along from there, you see that you trade into that EQ level of that range. So bang, pull that up from the low, pull that on from the high, and then your textbook play would be, okay, cool, you're in a daily imbalance. That's your higher time frame array that pairs up with, in fact, what we can do is plot on the higher time frame candle thing here, right? You see that's a daily one there. So if I bring this up from and add a few more on this, I'm trying to add some more candles. How many you've had in? Space between limits to, can we increase this? It's this one, I think. Right, cool. So you see you've got your daily imbalance there. That lines up nicely with, how do we get this to, I think I have to reset settings. Right, so I just want to push this over to the side a bit more, add some padding. Nice, cool. So you see, now you can see that daily and hourly, or 4 hourly together, right? So you've got your daily imbalance here, right? Which we're now holding. We've got that 4 hour that price has come into, that has tapped into our discount. And you can see we also have that area of volume here, right? That volume base, which price is now reacting from. Very nice. This is prime, right? It's a scenario where we want to be looking to go long. The only downside to this is this array here, right? We have an opposing H4 array. So in order for this to flip long, right? In order for this to flip long, we need to induce this, meaning that we need to transact above it. This doesn't mean you can't look for longs out of this range, but you need to be very much aware that this is where your trade idea collapses or has a potential of collapsing. So you need to be taking partials out over here, right? And you have to understand that on your larger time, as much as this was our kind of trigger, right? This doesn't shift order flow to be bullish just yet, because on our daily perspective, right, we haven't taken out any significant high or low. You see how this high didn't manage to break this low. So it's not as significant as it may seem, right? So overall, this is still very much bearish, in bearish territory, right? In terms of recent order flow. In order to really shift this, we need to induce this newly formed bearish array, take out this high, and we get that confirmation where, cool, this low made a new high, right? Which then pulled back, led to injections of liquidity to then take out that high again, and we get that confirmation. That would have led to strong bullish order flow. However, we don't get that, right? You see that what ends up happening, and what day are we on here? Thursday last week. So you see we actually end up forming more buy side liquidity pooling, right? And you see that we don't actually inject any liquidity from this array. Look how we tap into the daily imbalance and the 4-hour imbalance once, right? No follow through, as in we don't take out, we tap into this and we don't take out the high, right? This is weak. We're not injecting liquidity. Look how we don't get any arrays. As of right now, the most recent array is this bearish 4-hour, and we're not getting any reaction out of this bullish 4-hour, right? So again, we tap in, as in here and here and here, no reaction. And as we start to close below around 50% of this wick, this becomes more likely to trade into, right? And we just want to, so look, this now brings us into this week. So now going into this week, your bias or your narrative turns into something like this, where we still want to be trading long. That long narrative is still very much in play, but you want to see something like this, bang, take out this most recent high that made a most recent low, shift, trigger, and play this, right? That was the narrative for the week. So if we begin to play, nice, fails. Okay, cool. No, not just yet. Now, bang, shift. So here we've got our trigger. This is more of like a H1 trigger, right, that you get. But you see, this was the most recent high that made this recent low. We get injection wicks. You get injection wicks. Price body closes above this, and now you're looking for something like this, right? Cool. So Monday is very, look at this, nice, right? We tap into this order block on the daily, right, which is backed by this area of volume here. And if you're one of my students, you understand that these order blocks are most valid when on your lower time frame they're backed with this volume stability, right? So that order block taps in, we sweep liquidity, we tap into an array, which is your standard play, right? You build liquidity, you sweep that liquidity, you tap into some kind of array, right? Bang, you shift and you play that injection. So here we're very much like, sweet, this is going to go long, we want to go long, nice. So this happens around New York. So more or less we're sitting there saying next day we want to start looking for longs, right? You can also go into the recent videos that I've done explaining the more finer details of the trades that presented themselves here. But the next day, lower time frames didn't allow us to go long. You see, this is now London open around that time, right? No, it's not. Let me just shift that to... Right, so this was around London open on Wednesday, right? So Monday was in line with the plan, right? Monday, Tuesday was in line with the plan. Wednesday then, crumbled that plan, and that's when our blueprint collapsed. So you see that price then shifts. We got that injection, we got that shift in delivery. Sorry. Right? And then on Wednesday, where we're anticipating something like this, don't know why it does me like this. Like this, it fails, right? Now, you have to understand that let's think of it like a sat nav or a map. I don't know how well this analogy is going to go, but let's say you have a set path, right? Like so, and you're trying to get from point A to point B, and you're going down this path, you're going down this path, you're going down this path, right? And you get to that's not even a B. You get to somewhere around here, and this road gets blocked, right? This road gets blocked. Now this is where I need to use my brain and think how we can make this analogy work, right? This road gets blocked. You need to, you're not going to sit there and say, but there's no other way you can get to this, right? To try and sit here and say, okay, cool, this road is blocked. How else can I get to point B, right? There's no, you can see there's no path around this, right? This path is blocked. So you have to adapt to that situation. You can't just sit there and say, I'm going to float above this and try and force get into point B. Point B is no longer an option. This is blocked off. You cannot get there, right? So you need to adapt. You sit there and say, okay, cool. Well, what can I do? My next plan here, right, is if I can't go to point B, right, the only way I can go is turn around and go to point A. So now you have to plan for, okay, how do we go from here to here? I hope that makes sense. You can't get there, right? So you have to plan, and I've probably scuffed that completely. But the point I'm trying to make here is that if we close below this, right, especially when we close below that low, that sell side liquidity, let me just tidy that up a bit. Right? If you was expecting this is your point A, right, your plan A, or going from A to B, right? This is your roadblock, right? Where price closes below this sell side liquidity, that's your roadblock. And you now need to shift, or even a better way to think, I don't know why I'm trying to go back to this thingy here, right? Is if you have A and this is your path and you're trying to get to B, right? B, I might have to just scuff it. I might have to scuff this, yeah, because this I think we're just better off using price, right? Once you close below this, right, like how we did here, you need to adapt, because what is now the most logical scenario that's going to play out, right? It's not that price is just going to open up the next day and shoot higher, right? This is not likely, right? This is your buy side trigger. We're leaving behind new bearish intent. We're taking out lows that didn't manage to create anything significant, right? We've got bearish intent right here, right? And we're approaching the sell side liquidity area, right? Bearish imbalance. You've got your sell side liquidity down here. Your most logical scenario now, right, is you've got nothing here to stop price. You've induced the last bearish array, right? So if I just play forward, you see we've induced that fully. You have no daily arrays to help you here, right? So this, your path of least resistance is this. If price was, think about it like this, simplify it like this. If price went from here, right? If price tried to go from here, right? If price traded down into this area where it was deemed as cheap to find new buyers to take out this high, right? The one that's up there. And we attempted to do this, and now we're crumbling and we can't find buyers here. Buyers aren't stepping in here, right? We tried to, but we failed, right? Buyers tried to step in here, attempted to, and they failed. You've got no arrays here. This one got induced, right? Where's the next area that you're going to find buyers? Below this low where price is deemed as cheap. That's the most logical scenario, something like this, right? If the buyers from here couldn't take price higher, and we try to do our normal cycle of retrace and push higher, if that's not coming into fruition, you need to think, how can I adapt? What is the most likely scenario, right? It's that we need to find new buyers. The buyers here were not sufficient. We need to find new buyers below these lows, right? So that's how you adapt. You're not trying to say, oh, okay, cool, we've just swept this liquidity, now we might do this. No, this is less probable, because what are you reacting from here? You haven't got any array on your 4 hour. You haven't got any array on your daily, right? If we add some more data to this indicator, right? Understand that this mean threshold that we have, we've closed below it, right? The mean threshold is your kind of area where you say, cool, if we close below that, we're most likely going to start tapping into the lower end. Why does it always do me like this? We can start tapping into the lower end of that range. So here, no reaction. Right, we close below the mean threshold of that area. The majority of the volume that is present in this range is being induced. It's not pushing through. You have to understand that liquidity isn't constant, right? As much as this was an area where a lot of volume was present and a lot of volume was required to push price higher, and you can anticipate that, cool, we can trade back into this region, and the volume that was transacted at here and wasn't fully maybe all the volume that was trying to transact didn't manage to transact after we moved away in such an illiquid manner, right? Pools start to reform here, as you see, right? We tap into pools and it fails. We tap into pools and it fails. After price taps in and fails to push higher, right? The pool of liquidity which was once there begins to diminish because traders and institutions and algorithms begin to pull that liquidity away. The more we tap into this and the less we react, the algorithm basically says that this has less chance of holding and they can pull their liquidity away. So what once might have been a liquidity or a liquidity pool, right? If price taps into that and sits around it, the pool of liquidity that was available there can diminish and algorithms will start to pull it away, right? Especially due to the nature of PA that occurs over here. If we're not seeing any bullish intent and we're actually seeing bearish intent, inefficient delivery into this array, these algorithms will pull that liquidity away and diminish the pool of liquidity which may have once been there, right? So you say, cool, the idea for the week, my narrative, my blueprint collapsed here once we induced this low, right? Now, what's most probable? You almost have to do a start of week, weekly outlook all over again, midweek, right? What is most likely to happen here? We're super close to this draw on liquidity. We have bearish arrays on top of us, right? I want to see some kind of tap into this array to then trade towards this. It's counter stage. It's not what you had planned, but you have adapted. You have adapted, right? And in this case, you can adapt because you've got these weak lows down here, right? Price isn't, it's not like we've taken out this liquidity and now we're hanging around, right? This is open. So if price pulls back and this is formed at 6 p.m. UK time, these are PM lows, these weak lows that, as you see, will not do anything significant. We just hang around. And you see as London opens, and I explained this trade in one of my recent videos, right? We tap into that array and we dump, right? We dump and look how we react under this. Now, our scenario is, what can we do? Either price is going to shift, right? This is going to be fine. This is going to find new buyers, right? That are going to inject liquidity to push price higher and take it up to here and complete this interim buy side model, which, you know, is part of this larger buy model. Or we're going to collapse on the idea again and price is going to, you know, start trading lower and we adapt and start trading towards the downside draws, right? Such as this low here. So it's you need to adapt. You need to understand at what point is your plan and your blueprint invalidated. At what point does the idea collapse? And if it does collapse, what is the new most likely scenario to occur? And you need to align yourself with that. So now if we just play price, just to wrap up the week's PA, you see that we're now more or less hanging around those lows over there. But like I said, on Wednesday, that plan collapsed, right? Wednesday, after that, you don't want to be forcing trying to go like this again, right? If you took buys here and lost, and buys here and lost, and buys here and lost, right? You're obviously, something's wrong, right? You're not all there because at some point you need to realize that your plan is collapsing, right? And again, like I said, at this point, the moment we close below here, that is when you should have identified my plan and my bias has collapsed. What can I do now? New draw on liquidity, new probable scenario, new array, trade into that, bang. Notice how in this leg, from this high to this low, you have not formed a single bullish array. Not a single bullish array, which tells you a lot. From even this reaction here, no bullish array. No buyers are stepping in with intent that is overwhelming sellers, right? Here, no bullish array. You get this slight order block, but this low did not do anything significant. If we took this out, this would have been a significant order block, but not the case, right? You see that then that doesn't leave behind an imbalance. Or does it? Slight imbalance, right? Slight imbalance which gets induced. So again, but no clear imbalance. Look at this move here, right? You can see your clear arrays, you see your imbalances. This doesn't do that, right? So that tells you a lot. You need to be reading these finer details and intricacies of price. No bullish intent, no bullish arrays. And yeah, like I said, as soon as price got here, you should have realized, cool, my plan has collapsed. Plan has collapsed. Remember that, my plan has collapsed, right? That's where your plan collapsed, because we take out this low, we leave behind bearish arrays, nice bearish arrays, bang, you tap into that and you can play that, right? That's how you navigate your plan collapsing, right? Hope you all enjoyed that. I will see you in the next video.